The sky bled rust as evening settled over the crooked farmhouse. Wind hissed through broken boards, carrying the smell of stale whiskey and rain-soaked dust. Inside, Clara stood barefoot on splintered planks, breath tight in her chest. The door slammed open. Boots scraped. Her stepfather filled the frame, a shadow swollen with drink and rage. His eyes burned red beneath the brim of a sweat-stained hat. "You think you can run?" His voice slurred, heavy as gravel. "Think you can hide with those ranch hands?" Clara's heart pounded, but her chin stayed high. "I only wanted to see the morning," she whispered. He sneered, the smell of sour liquor spilling into the room. "Morning? You'll see nothing." His hand struck, an open palm that cracked like a rifle shot. She staggered but did not fall. He seized her wrist, fingers digging until the skin blanched. "Family owes debts," he spat. "And you're payment enough." Clara's eyes flicked to the lantern swinging overhead, flame trembling in its glass cage. "Let me go," she said, voice low, steady. "Not a chance." He yanked a length of rawhide from his coat, the leather hissing as he uncoiled it. "You'll learn respect tonight." She tried to pull free, nails biting into his arm, but he was a wall of muscle and spite. He bound her wrists, each knot drawn slow, deliberate, the rope cutting like cold teeth. The lantern light danced across her face, bruised, defiant, streaked with a single tear. Outside, thunder rolled over the empty plains. He dragged her through the door, boots thudding against the porch, then down the creaking steps. The night air hit sharp and dry. Stars burned like distant judgment. Clara's breath turned to smoke in the cooling dusk. "Please," she rasped, "don't do this." He didn't answer. The wagon waited, dark and splintered, mules shifting nervously in its traces. He threw her inside like a sack of grain as the wheels groaned to life. Clara stared back at the farmhouse, its single lantern flickering against the dark, a lonely heartbeat fading into black. In her chest, hope flickered once, fragile as that dying flame. Moonlight stretched across the salt flats like cold steel. The wagon wheels had long since vanished, leaving only the hiss of wind and Clara's ragged breathing. Her stepfather's spurs had jingled a final time before fading into the desert's endless hush. The mesquite tree leaned crooked against the stars, its bark rough against her back. Rawhide bit deep into her wrists, each pulse of blood a burning ache. Sand stung her face as the night wind shifted. He'd left a single water jug at her feet, empty, cracked, a cruel mockery. Clara tilted her head to the endless dark sky. Stars glimmered like icy witnesses. Her voice came as a rasp, barely sound at all. "Just one morning," she whispered. A coyote yipped somewhere beyond the ridge, the cry carrying like a lonely hymn. Her throat tightened. She pulled against the rope, twisting, the fibers grinding skin until warm blood slicked her palms. The knots held. Memory flickered, her mother's soft lullaby, the smell of biscuits rising in an old iron oven. Warmth and light, now only ghosts in the desert wind. Sand shifted nearby. Clara froze. A rattlesnake slid from shadow, scales whispering across the grit. Its rattle buzzed like dry bones. "Easy," she breathed, though her heart thundered. The snake coiled, tongue tasting the air, then slid away into blackness. Hours bled together, the night grew colder. Her lips cracked. When she tried to swallow, her throat burned. She fought the rising panic, forcing herself to count each breath. "Not tonight," she murmured. "Not like this." A sudden gust swept the flats, carrying the smell of distant rain and something else, faint, metallic, alive. She strained her ears. Hoofbeats, slow, measured. She turned her head, rope scraping bark. Far off, a single lantern bobbed like a firefly on the horizon. The light swayed in rhythm with a horse's stride, each flicker a promise. "Please," Clara whispered, though no one could hear. The sound grew, steady as a heartbeat. A dark rider emerged against the silver wash of moonlight, coat trailing like shadow. The lantern swung from his saddle, casting long, golden arcs across the salt. Clara's breath caught. Hope, faint but fierce, flared in her chest. The rider reined closer, the glow brightening her bloodied hands. She tried to call again, but only a cracked gasp escaped. Still, the light kept coming. The lantern's glow cut through the last veil of night like a small, stubborn sun. Clara squinted as the rider slowed his Mustang, hooves crunching the salt crust with a low, steady rhythm. He swung down in one fluid motion, tall, broad-shouldered, hair silvered by years of dust and dawn. His coat smelled of horse and cedar smoke. "Easy," he said, voice low as a canyon echo. "You hurt bad?" Clara's lips cracked when she tried to speak. Only a rasp emerged. He crouched, eyes scanning the rawhide that bound her. "Hold still." A knife flashed, catching the moon. With careful precision, he slid the blade between rope and skin. The knots gave way and the rope slumped like a dead snake. Her wrists were red and torn. He wrapped them quickly with a strip of clean cloth pulled from his saddlebag. "Name's Eli McCrae," he said, tightening the knot. "Rancher out past Sage Creek." Clara drew a shallow breath. "Clara," she managed. Eli studied her a moment, lantern light painting the lines of weather and quiet strength across his face. "Can you ride?" "I'll try." He lifted her with a gentleness that belied his calloused hands, settling her in front of him on the saddle. The Mustang shifted but obeyed a soft click of Eli's tongue. The desert wind carried the scent of rain as they moved. Stars thinned. On the far horizon a pale seam of light opened, the first blush of dawn. Clara leaned back, every muscle trembling. For the first time in hours, her breath came easier. "You're safe now," Eli said, barely above a whisper. The trail wound through silent sagebrush, each hoofbeat a steady drum. A coyote's cry faded behind them. Ahead the sky bled pink and gold, the morning she had begged to see. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun had cleared the rim of the hills. A cabin waited, smoke curling from its stone chimney. A lone lantern still burned on the porch, steady against the growing light. Inside, warmth greeted her. Wood smoke, coffee, the soft crackle of a pot-belly stove. Eli eased her onto a narrow cot and drew a quilt over her shoulders. "You rest," he said. "No harm will reach you here." For the first time since the night began, Clara believed him. Dawn poured through the window, washing the room in gold. Days passed like slow-moving clouds. Clara's wrists had begun to heal, the raw redness replaced by tender, pale skin. She stayed close to the ranch, learning the rhythm of chores, mending fences, feeding calves, listening to Eli's quiet instructions. The wind whispered through the cottonwoods, carrying scents of sage and earth. It was calm, almost holy, and Clara let herself breathe, let herself hope. But hope is fragile in the desert. One evening, as shadows stretched long across the porch, a sudden thud of hooves shattered the quiet. Clara froze, chest tight. On the ridge above, a figure appeared, hat brim low, coat flapping in the wind. Her stepfather, rifle in hand, a sneer splitting his sunburned face. Behind him a few ragged men lingered, shadows against the dying light. "Clara," he called, voice rough as gravel. "You think you can hide?" Eli stepped from the porch, shotgun in hand. Lanterns swung from hooks, casting trembling circles of light. His eyes were steady, unyielding. "Not tonight," he said. "Not ever again." Clara's heart thumped like a drum in her chest. Her stepfather spat into the dirt. "She's mine, always will be." Eli shifted, boots sinking into the dust. The wind kicked up, curling dust around their ankles, a living wall between them and the threat. "Not while I stand here," he said, voice low, carrying the weight of every desert sunrise he'd ever seen. The stepfather cursed, stepping closer, gun raised. The gang tensed behind him, torches flickering like angry fireflies. Clara's hands clenched the railing. She could feel the raw ache of her wrists, the fear coiled like a snake in her stomach, but also something sharper. Defiance. Eli's finger brushed the trigger. "Go," he said simply. The outlaw glared, chest heaving. Then, with a last venomous look at Clara, he turned his horse. The gang followed, boots thudding over the hard-packed earth, leaving a swirl of dust and fading threats in their wake. Clara exhaled, knees weak, lantern light trembling across her face. The porch smelled of smoke and leather, of safety carved by steady hands. Eli lowered the shotgun and nodded to her. "You're learning fast," he said, voice soft now. And for the first time in weeks, Clara allowed herself a small, bitter smile. The night had passed, but the desert never forgot, and neither would she. The town of Red Mesa lay sprawled under the harsh glare of a late morning sun, buildings baked to a brittle tan. Dust curled along the streets, catching in Clara's hair as she rode beside Eli. Her hands were steady on the reins, though her heart thudded with unease. They dismounted outside the sheriff's office, a squat wooden building with iron hinges and a single swinging sign. The door creaked as they entered, carrying the smell of horse sweat and old leather. Sheriff Ada Grant, steel-eyed and calm, rose from behind her desk. Her hands rested on the polished wood, knuckles pale from years of steady work. "Clara McBride?" she asked. "Yes," Clara said, voice firm but trembling. He left me in the desert. My stepfather. He's dangerous." Ada nodded, listening as Clara recounted every detail. The rawhide, the salt flats, the rope cutting into her wrists, the cruel laughter fading over the horizon. Eli stood quietly by her side, silent as a rock. "You've got courage," the sheriff said finally, "and you've got proof. We'll make sure he pays for this." She handed Clara a folded set of papers. Warrants, orders, justice beginning its slow, deliberate crawl. Clara's eyes flicked to Eli. "He won't stop," she murmured. Eli shook his head. "Not with the law behind you." Outside, the town carried on oblivious. Children ran past a dry fountain, boots thudding against sun-baked planks. Yet Clara felt the weight of the desert night behind her, still lingering in her veins. Later they visited the small, sunlit church at the edge of town. The preacher, a tall man with gentle eyes, placed a hand on her shoulder. "The night has teeth," he said softly, "but morning has hands too, hands that lift, that heal." Clara sat in a pew, sunlight streaming through colored glass, dust motes dancing like tiny sparks in the golden beams. For the first time she felt the fragile thread of hope tighten against the fear in her chest. Eli watched from the doorway, lantern in hand from the ranch ride earlier, quiet and steady. "We do what we can," he murmured to her. "Then we let the law take the rest." Clara inhaled, letting the warmth of the church fill her lungs. Outside, the wind stirred the town's dry streets, carrying the faint scent of sage and freedom. The first threads of a new day, fragile but unbroken, stretched across the horizon. And for the first time she believed it. The desert could no longer claim her. Night fell over the ranch like a velvet trap. The wind rattled the eaves and whispered through the tall cottonwoods, carrying the scent of dry earth and sage. Clara lay on her cot, listening to the soft creak of the cabin settling, trying to convince herself the danger was gone. Then came the first sound, hooves striking the hard-packed dirt, low and urgent. Clara's chest tightened. She crawled to the window, peering into the shadows. Torches bobbed along the ridge, orange flames licking the darkness. Her stepfather and his gang emerged, ragged and snarling, the glint of rifles catching the sparse moonlight. They shouted her name, threats like venom. "You can't hide forever," one yelled. "She's ours tonight." Eli moved behind her, shotgun ready, boots silent against the floorboards. His hand rested on her shoulder, firm and steady. "Stay low," he whispered. "Keep calm. We'll get through this." The first shots cracked the night like whips. Sparks from the rifles lit the darkness as the gang fired at the barn, setting a small shed ablaze. Smoke curled into the sky, the smell of burning wood stinging Clara's nose. She gripped the rifle Eli handed her, fingers trembling but eyes focused. The firelight painted her face in flickering gold and shadow. Her heart hammered, but for the first time, fear was sharpened into purpose. "Clara, watch the left flank," Eli barked, voice carrying over the chaos. Horses reared and whinnied, the ranch alive with panic and instinct. The gang pressed closer, shouting and firing. Sparks danced across the walls of the cabin, illuminating the grit and sweat on Eli's face. Clara squeezed the trigger once, twice. The recoil jolted her shoulder, but the sense of control steadied her. Shots echoed, flares of orange and gold against the black. The gang howled, some retreating, some advancing like desperate predators. Eli's presence anchored her, a wall of moral certainty in the storm of violence. The fire roared, the wind carried its heat inside. Clara's eyes met Eli's. No words were needed. This night, this chaos, would not break them. In the shadows of the torches and flames, the first threads of hope glimmered, fragile, defiant, and alive. The ranch was under siege, but so was their fear, and fear had yet to win. The blaze from the shed painted the night sky in angry orange, smoke curling like black fingers over the ranch. Clara crouched behind the railing of the porch, heart hammering, shotgun gripped tight, the wood beneath her hands warm from the fire's heat. Then came the sound that cut through panic like a bell, hoofbeats, fast and steady, not theirs. The sheriff and her deputies emerged from the darkness, rifles raised, badges catching the torchlight. Their arrival split the chaos, a tide of authority crashing against the outlaw gang. "Hold your fire!" Sheriff Ada's voice rang, steel over smoke. "You're surrounded." The gang faltered, confusion flickering across their faces. The stepfather cursed, eyes wild, glancing from Eli to the deputies, then back at the cabin. Eli stepped from behind Clara, shotgun leveled, boots sinking into the dirt, lanterns swinging from hooks casting their long, trembling shadows. "You're done," he said, voice low and certain, carrying the weight of years spent facing the desert alone. The gang hesitated, then fired sporadically. Dust and sparks flew, bullets striking boards, kicking splinters into the night. Clara squeezed the trigger once, the recoil jolting her shoulder, but her aim steady. The sheriff's deputies fanned out, moving like shadows, rifles glinting in the firelight. "Stepfather!" Ada shouted, commanding. "Drop your weapon!" He lunged, desperation in every sinew, but Eli met him with a single solid step. The gun clattered to the ground, caught between iron cuffs and authority. The deputies moved in, chains clicking, cuffing each gang member with practiced efficiency. Clara exhaled, body shaking, knees weak, as the chaos slowly ebbed. The remaining gang retreated, hooves thundering across the dust, leaving a haze of smoke, scorched earth, and silence. Eli's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, grounding her. "It's over," he said, voice low but steady. Clara's gaze followed the stepfather, now subdued, hooded eyes meeting hers one last